This is Tammy again, and welcome to Lesson 8, The Best and the Worst. Joe wins every time. Let's read the article and then answer this question. Why is Joe's garden the most beautiful one in the town? It says, Joe Sanders has the most beautiful garden in our town. Nearly everybody enters for the nicest garden competition each year. Competition. A competition is an event which people compete for something. But Joe wins every time. Bill Fritz's garden is larger than Joe's. Bill works harder than Joe and grows more flowers and vegetables. But Joe's garden is more interesting. He has made neat paths and has built a wooden bridge over a pool. The word paths means a way that's laid down on the ground for people to be able to walk through. And wooden means something that's made of wood. And a pool is a small area of still water, sort of like a swimming pool. I like gardens too, but I do not like hard work. Every year I enter for the garden competition too, and I always win a little prize for the worst garden in the town. So let's read this article again. It says, Joe Sanders has the most beautiful garden in our town. Nearly everybody enters for the nicest garden competition or the event where people compete for a prize each year, but Joe wins every time. Bill Fritz's garden is larger than Joe's. Bill works harder than Joe and grows more flowers and vegetables, but Joe's garden is more interesting. He has made neat paths or walkways for people to be able to walk through his garden and has built a wooden bridge over a pool. He has built a bridge made of wood over a small area of water that doesn't move on its own. I like gardens too, but I do not like hard work. Every year I enter for the garden competition too, and I always win a little prize for the worst garden in town. Now let's answer some questions about what we've just read. Number 1 says, who has the best garden in town? It says, Joe Sanders has the most beautiful garden in town. Number 2, what does he win each year? Well, each year he wins the nicest garden competition. Who else has a fine garden? Bill Fritz has a fine garden too. Number 4, is Joe's better or not? It says here, Bill works harder than Joe and grows more flowers and vegetables, but Joe's garden is more interesting. So, Joe's garden is better. Number 5. Is the writer's garden beautiful or is it terrible? Here it says, every year I enter for the garden competition too, and I always win a little prize for the worst garden in town. So that means that the writer's garden is terrible. And number 6, what does he always win a prize for? Well, he always wins a prize for the worst garden in town. The best and the worst. The best and the worst. Here it says Mary is tall, but Jane is taller. Jane is taller than Mary. Carolyn is very tall. She is the tallest girl in the class. Jane's handwriting is bad, but Mary's is worse. Carolyn's handwriting is very bad. It is the worst handwriting I have ever seen. The 3 girls collected photos of film stars. Mary hasn't many photos, but Jane has more. Jane has more photos than Mary. Carolyn has very many. She has the most. Mary's collection of photos is not very good. Jane's is better. Carolyn's collection is the best. Last week, the 3 girls bought expensive dresses. Carolyn's dress was more expensive than Jane's. Mary's was more expensive than Carolyn's. Mary's dress was the most expensive. Now let's answer these questions about Mary, Jane, and Carolyn and answer some questions. Number 1 says, how does Mary's handwriting compare with Jane's? How does it compare? Jane's handwriting is bad, but Mary's is worse. So Mary's handwriting is worse than Jane's. Worse than Jane's. Number 2, how does Carolyn's handwriting compare with Mary's and Jane's? Carolyn's handwriting is very bad. It is the worst handwriting I have ever seen. So Carolyn's handwriting is the worst. Number 3, how does Carolyn's dress compare with Jane's? How does Carolyn's dress compare with Jane's? It says, last week the 3 girls bought expensive dresses. Carolyn's dress was more expensive than Jane's. So Carolyn's dress was more expensive than Jane's. Carolyn's dress was more expensive. Number 4, how does Mary's dress compare with Jane's and Carolyn's? How does Mary's dress compare with Jane's and Carolyn's? It says Mary's dress was the most expensive. So Mary's dress was the most expensive. In the passage, it says, in the article, there are 7 comparisons, comparing something, as in, is it better, is it worse? Let's read the article again and find the 7 comparisons. Joe Sanders has the most beautiful garden in town. Nearly everybody enters for the nicest garden competition each year. But Joe wins every time. Bill Fritz's garden is larger than Joe's. Bill works harder than Joe and grows more flowers and vegetables. But Joe's garden is more interesting. He has made neat paths and has built a wooden bridge over a pool. I like gardens too, but I do not like hard work. Every year I enter for the garden competition too, and I always win a little prize for the worst garden in town. Let's count and see how many comparisons we found. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 7 comparisons. Most beautiful, nicest garden, larger than, harder than, more interesting, worst garden. These are all comparisons. We're comparing one or more things to each other. Letter C. Let's give the correct form of the verbs in parentheses. Joe Sanders has the most beautiful garden in our town. Most beautiful garden. Nearly everybody enters for the nicest garden competition each year, but Joe wins every time. Bill Fritz's garden is larger than Joe's. Bill works harder than Joe and grows more flowers and vegetables. But Joe's garden is more interesting. He has made neat paths and has built a wooden bridge over a pool. I like gardens too, but I do not like hard work. Every year I enter for the garden competition too, and I always win a little prize for the worst garden in the town. Now, section D, it says put in, of, or in. So we're going to fill in these blanks with the words of or in. Number 1 says, which is the longest river blank the world? Which is the longest river in the world? We don't say which is the longest river of the world. Which is the longest river in the world? Meaning inside the world. Number 2, this is the finest picture blank them all. This is the finest picture of them all. Number 3, this stereo is the most expensive blank all the ones in the shop. This stereo is the most expensive of all the ones in the shop. Number 4, he is the best boxer blank our town. Can you guess which word fills in that blank? If you said in, you're right. He is the best boxer in our town. Special difficulties. Everyone, everybody, everything. It says everybody enters for the nicest garden competition. Everybody, meaning all the people. Everything is ready. Everything, all the things are ready. Everybody has come. All the people have come. Everyone likes ice cream, meaning all the people likes ice cream. Everybody enters for the nicest garden competition. Everything is ready. Everybody has come. Everyone likes ice cream. Now, let's choose the correct verb out of these sentences. Number 1 says, everybody blank he will win. Believe or believes. Everybody believes he will win. Everybody believes he will win. Number 2, I heard a noise and went downstairs. I found that everything blank in order. I found that everything were in order, or I found that everything was in order. I found that everything was in order. Number 3, everyone blank to earn more and work less. Everyone try to earn more and work less. Everyone tries to earn more and work less. Everyone tries to earn more and work less. These sentences says everybody enters for the competition. Everyone stood up when he entered the room. Did you enter for this examination? The lights went out just as we entered the cinema. How many people have entered for the race? Now let's fill in these sentences with the correct word. He is very ill. No one is allowed to enter his room. We can just leave this blank and say no one is allowed to enter his room. Number 2, will you enter blank this week's crossword competition? Will you enter in this week's crossword competition? Or actually, number 1, we can say no one is allowed to enter in his room. We can say no one is allowed to enter in his room, or we can simply say no one is allowed to enter his room. They both are correct. Number 3, many athletes have entered blank the Olympics Games this year. Many athletes have entered in the Olympics Games this year. No one saw the thief when he entered the building. We can leave that blank. I have entered blank the examination, but I don't want to take it. I have entered for multiple choice. Bill, one of these sentences is true. Which one? Well, it says Bill Fritz's garden is the best and Joe Sanders is the worst. That's not true. Joe Sanders' garden is the best and the writer's is the worst is the true sentence. Number 2, one of these sentences is true. Which one? The writer likes gardens, but he is lazy. Bill Fritz's garden is larger than Joe's. It is a large garden. Number 4, Bill is a hard worker. He works harder than Joe. Joe's garden is more interesting than Bill's. The writer is fond of gardens. He likes them. Joe's garden is the best in the town. It is the best of them all. Number 8, Joe wins every time. He always beats Bill Frith. Joe grows more flowers. More flowers grow in his garden. Joe's garden is interesting. Joe is interested in gardening. The writer doesn't like hard work. It's a hard job to look after a garden. Every year the writer enters for the garden competition. Also, every year the writer enters for the garden competition also. Let's rewrite this sentence. Joe's garden is not as large as Bill Fritz's. Bill Fritz's garden is larger. Joe's garden is not as large as Bill Fritz's. Bill Fritz's garden is larger than Joe's. Bill Fritz's garden is larger than Joe's. Bill Fritz's garden is larger than Joe's.